Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are in October, also known as Spooktober, spooky season and the month of Halloween. This year for Halloween, I did do two different looks. I did one where I gave myself bruises with makeup, and I did one where I tried to make a neon skull where I worked in collaboration with Chess, otherwise known as Cruelty Free Makeup Haven here on YouTube and on Instagram. And I figured today, instead of showing you a spooky Halloween look that you can recreate yourself, I'm just gonna do some Halloween inspired makeup, do something dark, something dramatic, and tell you guys about horror movies. So I'm gonna get started with my primer before I tell you about some of my favorite horror movies. Now, I am a big horror movie fan. I won't say I know all the classics and that I'm fully up to date. However, I do enjoy a good horror movie, and I've watched a big variety of horror movies, and I think I've narrowed down what I like in horror movies. I then decided to make a list of all the horror movies I have watched. I then separated them into categories, and I'm going to tell you about each category and a few movies that fall in that category. That way, if a category sounds interesting to you, or you've watched one of the movies in it and you'd like to watch another one like that, I have a few suggestions for you. I'm going to try and keep the spoilers to a minimum, but I'm going to give you a rundown on what the movie is about and whatnot. So yeah, you might be hearing some spoilers, but I'm going to try and keep it to things you would have heard in the trailer anyways. The first category is there is a thing that you are afraid of. Which sounds dumb, I know, but this kind of suits your typical horror movie description where there's one specific thing that everyone's afraid of. And usually this one thing is supernatural. A good example of this would be Annabelle. You know you're afraid of Annabelle. You might not know what she is, you might not know exactly how she works or what she wants, but you know the thing you're afraid of is Annabelle. So let's start with Annabelle. There are 3 movies. There's Annabelle 1, Annabelle 2, Annabelle 3. I did not enjoy Annabelle 3, but 1 and 2 were both pretty good. I would recommend watching them. They're both movies where someone ends up with this possessed doll and then suffers the consequences. The movie is very well made. They're good with the suspense. They're good with like the clickbait, like you're expecting a jump scare, then it doesn't happen, and then it catches you off guard later. They're really good with explaining exactly where they come from, and it comes to a head quite properly. The build up is nice and long, but it doesn't go on too long that you get bored of it before you get to the final dramatic scene. But I'm sure everyone knows about Annabelle by now. A lesser known horror movie is Women in Black, not Men in Black. I thought it was going to be like a parody of Men in Black, but no, it's its own standalone horror movie with Daniel Radcliffe in it. It is a unique concept of this ghost who is haunting this one house because she has unfinished business. And then innocent Mr. Radcliffe decides to go stay there and then suffers the consequences. And then he goes through the process of finding out why she's there and what she does while she scares the heck out of you. Another good example is a movie called Insidious. I only really enjoyed the 3rd one in the series, not the first one. But this relies on OG horror, the whole idea of a spirit that is haunting you with malicious intent. It revolves around this teenage girl whose mom died, and she hears this spirit in the building and she thinks, oh, that's my mother reaching out to me. Unfortunately, it was not, because she invited evil into her world while trying to communicate with her dead mother, and then this lady with psychic abilities helped her resolve it. The movie had a few good scary moments in it. The thing you're afraid of, the spirit, is relatively unique, and you get peeks at it throughout the movie before you get the final reveal. And the movie also has 1 or 2 things that makes you cringe. Like when she breaks her casts off her legs. Because you hear the legs like crunching as she walks. That was so gross. I did not want to see that.
That doesn't sound fun.
Now, I don't want to spend the whole video just on this category, but other movies that fall in this category would be the movie Mama. It's a spirit that raised 2 girls that ended up being abandoned in the forest and how they have to adapt back to civilization even though the spirit is still around them. There was The Babadook, which was a very unique movie where you never actually see the Babadook himself, but rather you see everything from his perspective. It's about a spirit that haunts the single mom with a problematic child, and at some point she realizes the kid is not just throwing a tantrum, but there's actually something in the house. And there's a bit of a twist to the ending. There's also It, the first one, not the second one. I didn't enjoy it that much, but the first one was really good. I went to watch that in theater twice. It is the well-known story by Stephen King, and it's about this being who chooses to present himself as a clown most of the time, but he can shapeshift into your biggest fear, and then he like scares kids and then eats them. Or at least that's the impression you get from when he like bites the kid's arm off. It was a scary scene. The scariest scene is the projector scene, in my opinion, where they're like watching the flashes and then the jump scare, and I died. Then there's also The Curse of La Llorona, which was a casual watch in my opinion, and The Nun, which actually was pretty disappointing. I was expecting a lot more from the studio that made it, because all the other movies they made, like The Conjuring, were really good, and then The Nun, they kind of revealed the nun too early, so you weren't afraid of her anymore by the time that you actually get to the boss battle, so to say. But then those are the 8 movies I have for the first category.
I get that it is well known, but if you didn't know it, then you wouldn't really know what it is.
You don't have to know what it is. You think it's like a monster that lives in the drain, and then you find out as it goes along. The next category, you don't really know what you're afraid of.
But you know you're afraid of it.
Oh yeah, you very much are afraid of it, but you don't know what it is, like it's not revealed to you, or you don't understand it. It's something very unusual. A good movie in this category would be one named Oculus. You're afraid of a mirror, which is a very strange concept, but it's about these 2 kids whose childhood was ruined by this haunted mirror, and now when they're older, this brother and sister duo wants to find out what was going on. I'm gonna give myself some black eyebrows today. The sister was older when everything happened, so she saw the mirror doing the mirror's things, and she knew something was up and she was trying to prove it or get rid of it, where her younger brother went to therapy for it and doesn't believe it's real anymore. So the whole movie through, he's trying to convince her that no, you're just seeing things until things actually start happening. At one point, she's like eating an apple because you have to keep yourself energized so you can fight off the mirror, and she just bites into it and it cracks like glass, and she looks down and she had bitten into a light bulb, and she's just like, what is going on? Like, I swear I was just eating an apple. And she like takes out this piece of glass of her mouth, spits out blood, stands there in shock, and then her brother calls her and she looks up and he's like, what are you doing? And when she looks back, she was eating an apple this whole time. So weird stuff like that happens, and she's trying to prove that it's because of the mirror. It's a movie I managed to watch alone, but I really did enjoy it. It had a few cringy injuries in it. I don't like self-inflicted injuries in movies. I hate it, but there's a few of them. And it was a really good movie. Nightlight is a little of a less known horror movie, but it also falls in this category, and it is really good. It is a movie filmed from the perspective of the girl's flashlight, and she goes with a group of friends to a forest that's supposedly haunted, and they're gonna play this game called Nightlight, where all of them are gonna go hide, one of them is it, and then they have to like walk through the woods looking for each other. It's basically a big game of hide and seek, and I think when you give up, you shout Nightlight and the people come out again. But then, of course, they all get lost in the woods and they see things and creepy things happen and people die. The perspective really put a good twist on the movie, because she'd be like shining the flashlight to her left side while talking to someone so that she's not blinding them, and you'd see something pass and you're like, what is that? And you know they didn't see it. The movie was really good with building up the suspense. There's one scene where something is just straight up going crazy and you hear everyone shouting, but the flashlight's on the floor, so you can't see what's happening, you just see it rolling around as it's being kicked around. I found it unique and done really well. I've watched other movies kind of filmed like that as well, and I didn't enjoy it, but I think this one is a good example of how to do it right. Sinister is probably my favorite movie in this category. Even though most of my favorite movies are in this category, I tend to like the ones where you're afraid of something unusual versus just being afraid of your usual demonic thing. And in Sinister, there's this family where the dad is a writer, and he writes like crime novels about murders that weren't solved or handled correctly. And they end up moving into the house where the last family was murdered, and he's going to write about them. And he finds videos of when the family was still around, and he starts watching them. And he's using it to find out what happened to them, what led to their last days. He finds video of them actually being killed from the killer's perspective. They were the one filming it. And while he digs deeper into what could have happened and all that, weird things happen around the house. And this is a movie that really uses sound well to creep you out. I don't think you see the thing you should be afraid of until the very end of the movie, yet the whole way through you are scared out of your wits. And the movie eventually ties into folklore, and it ends with a really good plot twist. Sinister 2 was also really good. It just had an entirely different vibe to it because it was filmed from the other perspective that I can't even tell you about because that's a spoiler on its own. But it's a horror movie I could watch again. It was really good and I really enjoyed it, and it's one of the first ones I recommend to people. Dead Silence, again, an original movie concept. If you're afraid of dolls, this is the one for you because it revolves around ventriloquist dolls. And basically, wherever this one doll is, someone ends up dying. and like the doll's mouth opens and then all sound is gone. Like even though you're standing in the wind and it should be loud, you hear nothing and then you end up dying. And then the movie goes through the process of finding out exactly why these dolls are haunted in the first place. Can you stop it? And it has a really good plot twist at the end. I really did enjoy that. It isn't necessarily one I'd watch again because I know what's going to happen. However, it was one where I couldn't predict what was going to happen because it was such an out there concept. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark is another one of the movies that's like at the top of my list. It was very well done and I definitely enjoyed it. It's about this little girl who moves into a mansion of a place with her dad, and he's busy doing whatever his work is, and she's kind of left to her own devices, and she finds these little creatures that are apparently tooth fairies. And she like hears them behind the walls and whatnot, and she like investigates, finds them, sees one in her bed at some point. You see they're actually pretty ugly things. And then she quickly learns that they're actually quite dangerous, and her dad doesn't believe that they exist. He's too busy with his work, and there's a super cringy injury that happens at the end that, had my skin crawling. Even though it was very wholesome, which is not usually something you say about horror movies, it just was, oh my gosh, did not enjoy. But it was a good movie. Then there's Chernobyl Diaries and Devil's Pass. They're both movies where people go adventure. In the one they go to Chernobyl where that big explosion happened. In the other one they go hiking in the mountains. And in both movies things kind of go wrong, things are kind of weird, and then spoilers happen and everything goes downhill. It's one of those movies that relies on suspense where something's off but you can't put your finger on what it is. Like you're being shown the whole time something's wrong, like this clearly moved, it wasn't one of them. Then what else is out here because nothing should be here? In one movie they find someone's tongue and go, this is fine, we'll just continue, it's not like anything bad is gonna happen to us here. Like honestly, if you find someone's tongue lying around, are you just gonna be like, this is fine? Like aren't you going to report it or be wary at least? Like how are you just like, I guess tongues just rain around here? Bothered me so much. Another one worth mentioning is called Jezebel. It's about a girl who didn't get along with her parents too well, so she left town, built a life, got a fiance, everything was going well, and then he died in a car crash and she got injured, so she had to go home to her dad so he could look after her. And when she was there, she found a lot of stuff about her mom who had died when she was very young. Like a lot of videos that her mom had recorded when she was pregnant, and at first she enjoyed them, but after that they got creepier and creepier and things just didn't add up. And at first you think there's just this dark family secret that's gonna come out, but at the end there's actually something sinister going on. And this movie really took an old concept that's been done over and over again and made it fresh in a way that was fun to watch. Which is probably why it's one of the horror movies I remember as well as I do. And it has kind of a happy ending, if horror movies have happy endings. If you're interested in this category, you should also consider checking out The Lazarus Effect and Unfriended. Unfriended is very applicable now. It's about people dying in a video chat. Very 2020 vibes. I'm going to use this palette and go for dramatic black and red eye. Category 3 are movies I didn't really like, and I decided to call it 0 to 100 because these are the movies where nothing really happened, like one or two odd things happened throughout the movie until the very end, and then we're just gonna cram a whole horror movie into the last 10 odd minutes of this thing and you're gonna have to make sense of that afterwards. I don't enjoy that because that means like 99% of the movie was kind of a waste, and then the end they were like, oh yeah, jump scares and everything. Don't really like it. And here you'd find movies like Paranormal Activity where like nothing happens until the end. You'd find The Blair Witch Project, which was praised for being the first of its kind, but I really didn't like it. And then there's the one I don't hate that much, which is called The Uninvited. And The Uninvited is kind of a normal crime-solving story. It's about a daughter who believes her mom was murdered and that it wasn't really an accident, and then she investigates it with her sister. The movie was done really well. It ends in a plot twist that makes you look at the whole thing in a new light. And there's this really big whoa moment at the end of the movie. But I wouldn't rate it as anything too scary, and it's definitely one of a kind. It's not really a concept you can apply more than once. Kind of a thriller at best. This brush is still green from my last Halloween look. On to category number 4, where you find movies that have a real feel to them. It's a movie where you watch it and like it feels realistic, like this really could have happened. It doesn't feel like movie magic, it doesn't feel like, yeah, but those things aren't real, like it looks like this genuinely could have happened. It really feels like this is something that happened in the real world. And in some of the movies, such as Frozen, not the Disney movie, but the actual horror movie, it is something that really could have happened. It's two men who get stuck out in the snow in a blizzard and have to survive, and a lot of scary things happen while they're there. Even though, yeah, this is a lot more in the thriller category than in the horror category. There was a lot of suspense in it and it was a lot of fun to watch, and it did feel realistic because this is something that can happen to people. The Shallows is also a thriller movie that falls in that category. It's about, I think, Blake Lively trying to survive being cornered on a little island by a shark. The ending was a little dumb, but the rest of the movie was quite fun. But two really good movies in this category that I genuinely enjoyed would be As Above, So Below and Deliver Us from Evil. Both of the movies are about like realistic evil the way you'd read about it in biblical texts. As Above, So Below is about a group of people that go into the catacombs in Paris, and they end up on some unholy territories they really should have left alone, and then things just go wrong, and it's creepy and scary even though there's never a true thing that you see that's wrong. But it was done really well, and it does feel like something that could realistically happen to people that actually choose to go into the catacombs. I have not done that myself, and after that movie, I probably won't be doing that either. And then the movie Deliver Us from Evil is about your typical possession and exorcism and all that, but it's done really well in a really modern fashion. It doesn't feel cheap or cliche. It was a really good way of doing that concept. But I definitely would recommend those two movies. Then there's a category that I just called Sharks, which is where horror movies rely on a specific creature that people are trying to survive. And that tends to be sharks. One I already mentioned would be The Shallows. And then a movie that's a little older, it's actually as old as I am because it came out in 99. But that was fun to watch, was Deep Blue Sea. It's a movie where they have like a research center on shark, and for some reason they decide to genetically engineer sharks to be smarter, and then they outsmart the people have to try surviving this. It's chaotic. And it has a really good balance of being terrified because these people are going to die and laughing because these characters are really funny, which I think made it a really fun movie. There's also a parrot in it and a guy that's just a blast to have around. The CGI is definitely a product of its time, but there's nothing you can do about that. But I guess they make up for that by having one or two familiar faces in it. And if you have your science buddy watch it with you, you'll get to watch them cringe at how they get everything wrong too, and that makes it a lot more fun. I was that science buddy when I watched it. Oh my gosh, sharks cannot swim backwards. Why would they be able to do that? How would they be able to do that? Why would they need to do that? Anyways, category 6. You are scared of people and it is gory. A classic movie in this category would be Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this is definitely for people that enjoy gore more than actual horror. You would also enjoy something like A Wrong Turn. There's like 5 of those movies. I do not know why they were so popular. You would also enjoy the Final Destination movies if you're into these. You would also enjoy Halloween, even though that is the one movie I turned off because it was too gory. I didn't want to watch it. I was like, okay, that looks painful. I don't want to feel this cringe the whole time watching this movie. I'm done. And how could I possibly forget the whole Saw franchise, where there's basically a guy that puts people into traps where they have to hurt themselves or kill themselves to get out of it, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but there's always technically a way out, even though you might not want to do it. This one guy's head was in a trap where there were like nails in it and was gonna like snap on his head if he doesn't get the key within a minute, and the key was conveniently placed behind his eyeball. So if he was willing to pull his eye out to get that key out, he could like undo himself and not die. There's also this one scene where they make the character dig through a pile of needles, like hands and everything, just dig through it, and I just cringe so hard because I don't want to stick my hand in a pile of needles. I am a-okay. Don't need to do that before I die. But I guess one of the more popular movies in this category would be the Purge movies. They're a lot more casual and they're fun to watch, but ultimately they are about the violence. They do have a story to them, but don't let anyone tell you they're watching it for the plot. They're watching it for the gore. But it is a good example of gore being incorporated into a story. The plot of The Purge is that for 24 hours, any and every crime is legal, and most people try and hide, but the crazy people go out and burn down buildings, break into stores, and just kill people because it's fun and they can. It's an interesting society to live in, to put it that way. Category 7 is again, you're afraid of people, but this time because they're crazy. The most popular example in this category would probably be Silence of the Lambs, because you are afraid of Hannibal Lecter himself in this movie, but he's just an insanely intelligent guy who decided he wants to eat people for a living. And then this poor little lady who's trying to solve a case has to consult him on it and get to know him, and he plays a lot of mind games with her and everything. And she learns why he does what he does, and he kind of makes her uncomfortable by saying he knows her, and proving it by saying, yes, I can tell you're like this and you're like that, because he was really good at psychology. He was really good at his job. But the movie is more creepy because of the crazy stuff this man does and has done. The actual killer they're trying to catch is really like an afterthought. The Shining is also a very popular movie that falls in this category, where you kind of watch how this man goes crazy and you start kind of fearing on his behalf and on the behalf of his wife and kid. They're alone in this hotel while all the roads are snowed shut. They're kind of there to look after the place while there's no guests there. And you see a lot of creepy and unusual things, but you're not really sure if it's because he's going crazy or because those things are actually there. And at the end of the day, the movie never clarifies, which made it a really good movie. But before we get into the last category, let me get the boring liner and lashes out of the way. Let's hope this sucker stays where it's supposed to, but lashes always make me happy. The last category I just called That's Gross Man. And some movies have gore, and some movies are just gross. Like, you watch it and you're like, ew, I don't want to see this. Who even thought of this? How are you eating right now? Oh my goodness.
For me, that was a movie 300. Every second scene is just someone dying.
Yeah, like straight up guts, huh?
But yeah, like literally being disemboweled or, decapitated, and they don't hold back.
The movie that inspired this category all on its own is the movie called The Fly. And if you've seen The Fly, you know what gross is. And usually biology things don't gross me out. Like, I'm a biology major. It's not supposed to gross me out. It's supposed to be okay with these things. But oh no, not this movie. The main character in The Fly also played in the Jurassic Park movies. And he is a crazy scientist who made teleportation possible, which sounds very cool, right? But he accidentally teleported with a fly. So his genome and the fly's genome became mashed together, and he slowly turned into a fly. Now, just letting you know, that's not how that would happen. If you were to hypothetically put the genome of a fly and the genome of a human together, the cell would either die or it would expel the chromosomes of the fly. I think that's what would happen. You're not going to turn into a human fly hybrid like that movie said you would. It was very disgusting to see. Like, at one point he peeled off his fingernails and his teeth came out, and ew. Like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for that girl he was with to see. No, I did not enjoy.
Jeff
Goldblum. He's the main actor. My dad was actually the one that told me to go watch The Fly in the first place, and he told me, it's not the type of horror you'd usually like. It's just like, ew. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I watched it and I was like, oh, that's what that means. A lot of pressing my lips together, and I kind of like that. I'm gonna try and extend my lips a little bit to give it a little bit more drama to it, like clown mouth, but not that big. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so now my mouth looks a little wider than usual. Now I'm gonna connect that to my normal lip line. I was a bit wider than expected, but that definitely gives it more of a Halloween look. And then this is the final result. Makeup, but make it Halloween inspired. It's dramatic and it's fun. I feel I also could have stopped without adding this extra part and it would have been a normal cute look, but I felt Halloween is the perfect occasion to do ridiculous lips like these. I've been waiting for an excuse to try it because I wanted to see what it looks like, and this was the ideal occasion. I have 30 odd horror movie recommendations in case you were waiting for a reason to start watching horror movies. They are a lot of fun. I do get scared while watching them, but I enjoy the experience of being afraid while watching the movie. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm all tough and I can watch all these movies and everything is fine, but it's the emotion that makes it fun. If you also enjoy horror movies, please let me know down in the comments. Let me know what recommendations you have and what category they'd fall in, because I'd love to hear what movies other people have watched, because I've kind of run out of good horror movies to watch and nothing's really coming out now either. So I don't know what to do other than rewatch old ones I've already seen, but I really am in the mood for something new and something good. Because there definitely are a lot of bad horror movies out there, and I could probably make a whole video on horror movies I wish I never watched. But then, like I said, this is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If that is the case, feel free to leave a like down below. And while you're there, you're free to hit the subscribe button too for other non-Halloween related content in the future. We're back to our normal scheduled programming from here on out. But then I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye!
There's a kid's light on. That thing should be asleep.
Oh my gosh, what time is it?
My bedtime was 8:30 at the age. No, not even. It was like 7.
So I went to bed at 9 once, right? And I was like, you can like not be tired. That is an option. So I went to like 9 after that every day of my own volition.
Yeah, like